My name is Octavia Pierce, and I'm 75 years old. I spent 40 years as an interior designer, helping clients create homes that reflected their personalities, respected their needs, and honored their visions. I retired with $630,000 in savings, a paid-off house worth $510,000, and a deep belief that a person's home is sacred, a physical expression of who they are and how they want to live. I raised my daughter Simone alone after my husband passed away when she was 10 years old. I gave her everything: art classes, design school tuition, help starting her own boutique, unconditional support through every phase of her life. I thought we understood each other, especially about the importance of respecting personal space. Which is why what happened 5 weeks ago in my own living room shocked me to my core and taught me that sometimes silence is the most powerful response to violation. I'd been out for the afternoon, a doctor's appointment followed by lunch with friends. I was gone for about 4 hours. When I came home, I put my key in the lock, opened my front door, and immediately knew something was wrong. The air felt different, the light looked different, and then I stepped into my living room and stopped dead. Everything had been moved. My furniture, every single piece, was in a different location. My sofa, which I'd positioned facing the fireplace for 20 years, was now against the opposite wall facing the window. My reading chair, which belonged in the corner with the best natural light, was now by the doorway in shadow. My coffee table, my bookcases, my lamps, all rearranged. My daughter Simone and her husband Garrett were in my living room, adjusting a floor lamp in its new position. They turned when they heard me come in, both smiling like they'd done something wonderful. "Mom, perfect timing. We wanted to surprise you. We've been working on this all afternoon. Doesn't it look so much better?" I stood there, frozen, looking at my living room, my carefully designed space that I'd lived with for 2 decades, arranged exactly how I wanted it, completely transformed without my permission. You rearranged my furniture." "We redesigned the whole room," Simone said excitedly. "The flow was all wrong before. This creates so much better circulation and makes the space feel bigger. Mom, trust me, this is a huge improvement." They rearranged my house without asking. And I watched, not because I wanted to see what they'd done, but because I was too shocked to speak, too stunned to protest, standing in my own doorway looking at my violated space while my daughter beamed with pride at the surprise she'd created. How did you get in?" "I still have my key from when I lived here. Mom, aren't you excited? Wait until you see what we did with the dining room." "The dining room? They'd done this to more than one room." I walked through my house in a daze. The dining room, my table had been moved to the opposite wall, the china cabinet relocated, my carefully curated arrangement of family photos shuffled to different positions. My study, my desk moved from the window I'd specifically chosen for the morning light to the interior wall. My bedroom, they hadn't touched it, thank God, but my guest room had been completely transformed, furniture repositioned, decorative items moved. Every room except my bedroom and bathrooms had been rearranged. My entire home, the space I designed over decades to reflect exactly how I wanted to live, had been altered without my consent, without my input, without even a phone call asking if this would be okay. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched them standing in my redesigned living room, waiting for my grateful reaction, and I realized they genuinely thought they'd done something nice. They thought surprising me with unwanted changes to my home was a gift, not a violation. "Simone, why did you do this?" "Because we wanted to help. Mom, you've been living with the same furniture arrangement for years. Decades, probably. We thought it was time for a refresh. And since Garrett and I both have design backgrounds, I went to design school and Garrett worked in home staging. We knew we could create something much better." "Better according to whom?" Simone laughed, not understanding the seriousness in my question. "Better according to basic design principles. Mom, the traffic flow in here was terrible. You had the sofa blocking the natural walkway. The lighting was all wrong. Trust me, this is objectively better." Objectively better. As if design was mathematical, as if there was one correct way to arrange a home, as if my 40 years as an interior designer didn't matter because Simone and Garrett knew basic design principles. I stood in my rearranged living room and I made a decision. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't immediately demand they put everything back. I watched. I let them explain their design choices. I let them show me what they'd done to each room. I let them talk about traffic flow and focal points and visual weight. And while they talked, I observed. I documented, I planned. Because they'd rearranged my house without asking, and I was going to teach them exactly what that violation meant, not through confrontation, but through strategic, calculated response. But before I tell you what I did after discovering my entire home had been redesigned without my permission, before I reveal how 40 years as an interior designer taught me that a home reflects identity and violating that space is violating the person, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Click it now. Then smash that like button, because this story is going to show you that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Turn on those notifications, that bell icon, because you need to hear what happened when my daughter thought she could improve my home without asking, and how I responded in a way she never saw coming. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? I want to know who's here with me today. Because what I did when they rearranged my house without asking, the response I planned while they waited for gratitude, it's going to show you that respecting people's spaces matters and violations have consequences. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about my relationship with Simone, about my career understanding how deeply personal home design is, and about how I came to be standing in my own living room feeling like a stranger in my own house. To understand what happened, you need to understand my career and why home design means so much to me. I became an interior designer because I believed that homes are more than just shelters. They're expressions of identity. The way you arrange your furniture, the colors you choose, the items you display, all of it tells a story about who you are and how you want to move through the world. I started my design career 40 years ago, working with clients to create spaces that reflected their unique personalities and needs. And the first thing I learned, the most important principle of interior design, was this: never impose your vision on someone else's home. Listen to what they want. Understand how they live. Create for them, not for yourself. I'd seen what happened when designers ignored this principle. Beautiful rooms that clients hated because they didn't feel like themselves in the space. Perfectly arranged furniture that disrupted how people actually moved through their homes. Gorgeous designs that clients immediately changed because the designer had prioritized aesthetics over the client's real needs. The best interior design, I learned, isn't about creating the most beautiful space. It's about creating the right space for that particular person. I applied this principle to my own home. Every piece of furniture was placed deliberately. My sofa faced the fireplace because I loved sitting there with a book and a fire on winter evenings. My reading chair was in the corner with morning light because that's when I did my reading. My desk faced the window because I worked better with natural light and a view. Every choice reflected how I lived, what I valued, what made me comfortable. My home was me, in physical form. I raised Simone in that home. She grew up watching me work with clients, hearing me talk about design principles, understanding that homes should reflect the people who live in them. Simone became interested in design too. She went to design school, a good program that taught both aesthetics and function. After graduation, she worked for a boutique that sold high-end home furnishings. Garrett, her husband, had worked briefly in home staging before becoming a real estate agent. They both knew enough about design to be competent. But they didn't understand the deeper principle I'd spent 40 years learning. Design without consent is violation, no matter how beautiful the result. Over the past year, I'd noticed Simone making comments about my home. "Mom, have you ever thought about updating this room? The arrangement is so dated. This furniture placement doesn't really maximize the space. You could do so much more with this room. Mom, you've lived with this setup for decades. Don't you want something fresh?" I'd always responded the same way. I like my home the way it is. It works for me. But Simone kept pushing. But it could work better. Mom, you taught me about design. You know that spaces should evolve. Yours hasn't changed in 20 years. Because I like it this way. Simone, my home reflects how I live. I don't need it to evolve. Everyone needs change sometimes. Mom, you're stuck in the past. I wasn't stuck in the past. I was living in a space I'd intentionally created to meet my needs. But Simone saw stagnation where I saw satisfaction. 3 weeks ago, Simone asked if she could borrow my house key. Garrett and I might stop by this weekend to drop off that book I mentioned, but we're not sure exactly when we'll be in the area. Can I borrow your spare key so we don't have to coordinate timing? I hesitated, but ultimately gave her the key. She was my daughter. I trusted her. I didn't know she was planning what came next. 2 weeks ago, I mentioned casually that I had a doctor's appointment on Tuesday afternoon, followed by lunch with friends. So I'll be out for most of the afternoon, probably home around 4:00. I didn't think anything of sharing my schedule. It was just conversation. But Simone was planning. She now knew exactly when I'd be gone and for how long. That Tuesday, I went to my appointment, had lunch with friends, and came home around 4:15, and found my home completely rearranged. Simone and Garrett were still there, making final adjustments, waiting for me to arrive so they could see my reaction to their surprise. They rearranged my house without asking, and I watched, standing in my violated space, looking at furniture in wrong positions, feeling like my home had been stolen from me. Well, Simone asked eagerly, what do you think? What did I think? I thought they'd violated my space, disrespected my choices, and imposed their vision on my home without my consent. I thought they'd demonstrated fundamental disrespect for my autonomy and my right to control my own environment. But I didn't say any of that, not yet. Instead, I said quietly, it's certainly different. Different good, right? Mom, look at how much better the traffic flow is. And see how we created a conversation area by the window. And the way the light hits the sofa now, it's perfect. Garrett added, we really thought carefully about this, Octavia. We know you have strong opinions about design, so we wanted to make sure we got it right. We studied the space, considered the architecture, thought about functionality. This isn't just random, it's professional-level redesign. Professional-level redesign of my home without asking me. How long did this take you? About 3 hours, Simone said proudly. We had to move some heavy pieces, but Garrett's strong. And we were so careful with everything, Mom. We didn't damage anything. We even dusted while we were moving things. 3 hours. They'd spent 3 hours rearranging my home while I was at a doctor's appointment. And you used the key I lent you to get in. Yes, that's why I asked for it. I knew we'd need access while you were out. Mom, we wanted to surprise you. You certainly did that. I walked through the rooms again, this time paying closer attention to exactly what they'd changed. In the living room, my sofa was against the wrong wall. My reading chair was in shadow instead of light. My bookcases flanking the fireplace had been separated and placed on different walls, destroying the symmetry I'd carefully created. In the dining room, my table was positioned so that when I sat at my usual spot, I'd be facing a blank wall instead of the garden window I'd always looked out while eating. My china cabinet, which I'd placed to catch afternoon light that made the glass sparkle, was now in a corner with no direct light. In my study, my desk faced away from the window I loved, positioned instead against an interior wall. My reading lamp was on the wrong side. My files and papers, which I'd organized on specific shelves, had been moved to different locations. Every change revealed that Simone and Garrett had prioritized their design principles over my actual life. They'd created what looked good to them without considering how I actually used these spaces. My reading chair was in shadow because they thought it looked better balanced against the doorway. Never mind that I read in that chair every morning and needed the natural light. My desk faced a wall because they thought it created better feng shui. Never mind that I'd specifically placed it by the window because I work better with a view. My dining table faced a wall because they thought it created better flow through the room. Never mind that I'd positioned it by the window so I could watch birds while I ate breakfast. They'd designed for aesthetics without understanding function. They'd created a beautiful space that didn't work for the person who lived in it. And they'd done it all without asking. "So you like it?" Simone asked hopefully. "Mom, say something, you're being so quiet." I looked at my daughter who'd gone to design school, who should understand the fundamental principle of respecting the client's vision, who'd spent 3 hours rearranging my home without permission. And I smiled, a small, calm smile. "It's very interesting. Thank you for thinking of me." Simone looked relieved. "Oh, good. I was worried you'd be upset about the surprise, but I knew once you saw it, you'd love it. Mom, you're going to be so much happier with this arrangement. Trust me." They left shortly after, both pleased with themselves, confident they'd improved my life. And I stood in my rearranged living room, that small, calm smile still on my face, and I began planning exactly how to respond to this violation. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched. And what I saw wasn't just furniture in wrong positions. It was complete disrespect for my autonomy, my expertise, and my right to control my own space. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. They thought because I didn't yell or cry or immediately demand they fix it, I'd accepted their gift. They had no idea what was coming. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. After Simone and Garrett left, I stood in my rearranged living room for a long time, not moving, just observing. 40 years as an interior designer had taught me to analyze spaces carefully before making any decisions. So that's what I did. I walked through every room they'd touched, taking photos on my phone. Not just overview shots, detailed photos of every piece of furniture in its new position, every item they'd moved, every change they'd made. I documented everything, because I knew that what came next would require evidence. Then I sat down, in my reading chair that was now in the wrong location, in shadow instead of morning light, and I made a list of everything that was wrong with their redesign. Living room. Sofa facing away from fireplace. Eliminates my favorite winter evening activity. Reading chair in shadow. Makes morning reading impossible without artificial light. Bookcases separated. Destroys the symmetry I'd created. Makes book access less convenient. Coffee table too far from sofa. Have to reach awkwardly for drinks books. Floor lamp, now blocking the natural walking path to the kitchen. Dining room. Table positioned facing blank wall. Eliminates garden view during meals. China cabinet in dark corner. Glass no longer catches light. Buffet moved away from kitchen. Less convenient for serving. Study. Desk facing interior wall. Removes window view and natural light. Reading lamp on wrong side. I'm right-handed. Lamp now casts shadow on my work. File shelves rearranged. I can't find my organized documents. The list went on. Every single change looked good aesthetically but failed functionally. They'd created a designer showroom, not a lived-in home. But I didn't move anything back. Not yet. Instead, I did something that might seem strange. I lived with their arrangement. For 3 days, I moved through my house exactly as I normally would, but with all the furniture in wrong positions. I tried to read in my chair with inadequate lighting. I sat on my sofa facing away from the fireplace I loved. I ate at my dining table facing a blank wall. I worked at my desk with no window view. And I documented every single inconvenience, every functional problem, every way their design failed to meet my actual needs. Day 1, tried to read in the morning in my relocated chair. Shadow from the new position meant I had to turn on a lamp despite it being sunny outside. Wasted electricity. I strain from artificial light. Day 2, wanted to work at my desk while enjoying the garden view. Couldn't. Faced blank wall instead. Felt claustrophobic and unmotivated. Productivity decreased. Day 3, tried to get a book from the bookcase that used to be easily accessible. Now had to walk all the way across the room. Tripped on the floor lamp they'd positioned in what used to be a clear walking path. Nearly fell. By the end of 3 days, I had a comprehensive list of exactly how their redesign had made my life worse, not better. Then I called Simone. "Hi, honey. Can you and Garrett come over this weekend? I want to talk to you about the redesign." "Of course. I knew you'd want to discuss it more once you'd lived with it for a few days. You love it, right?" "We'll talk on Saturday. Come around 2:00. That gave me 3 more days to prepare, and I had a lot to prepare. First, I called 3 of my former clients, people I'd designed homes for over the years who'd become friends. I explained what had happened and what I was planning. "My daughter rearranged my entire house without asking. I want to show her exactly why that's a problem. Would you be willing to help?" All 3 agreed immediately. Next, I researched. I pulled out my old design textbooks and found specific passages about the fundamental principle of client autonomy in interior design. I printed out articles from design magazines about respecting the homeowner's vision. I compiled quotes from famous designers about the importance of designing for how people live, not just how spaces look. Then I did something more creative. I hired a professional photographer, someone who specialized in interior photography. I need before and after photos, but the before is actually the after in this case. It's complicated. Can you come tomorrow? The photographer spent 2 hours documenting my house in its current rearranged state. Professional quality photos showing every room from multiple angles. When Saturday arrived, I was ready. Simone and Garrett showed up at 2:00, both looking excited. "Mom, have you been enjoying the new layout? I bet you're sleeping better already. Good feng shui does that." "Come in, sit down, we need to talk." We sat in the living room. On the sofa they'd repositioned, which meant we were all facing the window instead of being able to look at each other comfortably during conversation. The first functional failure. "Simone, Garrett, I want to understand something. Why did you rearrange my house without asking me first?" Simone looked surprised by the question. "We wanted to surprise you. We thought if we asked, you'd say no because you're resistant to change. But we knew once you saw how much better it could be, you'd love it." "So you knew I'd say no, but you did it anyway." "Well, we knew you'd be hesitant. But Mom, sometimes people need to be pushed out of their comfort zones. You've had the same furniture arrangement for 20 years. That's not healthy." "Who decides what's healthy for my living space?" "Basic design principles do. Mom, you know this. You were a designer. Spaces should evolve, flow should be optimized, visual weight should be balanced." "And who should make those decisions about my home?" Garrett jumped in. "Octavia, we have professional training. I worked in home staging. I know what makes a space appealing and functional." "Appealing to whom? Functional for whom?" "For anyone. Good design is universal." I opened the folder I'd prepared. "Let me show you something." I pulled out the professional photos of my house in its current state. Beautiful images. The photographer had done excellent work. The rooms looked stunning. "These are gorgeous, right? Professional quality." "They're beautiful," Simone said. "See, Mom, this proves how much better the space looks now." "Now let me show you this." I pulled out my documented list of functional failures. I read through it, item by item. The reading chair in shadow, the desk facing a wall, the table positioned away from the window, the walking path blocked. Every single way their beautiful design failed to meet my actual needs. Simone frowned. "Mom, those are minor inconveniences. You'll adjust." "Why should I adjust in my own home? Why should I modify how I live to accommodate design choices I didn't make and don't want?" "Because the design is better." "Better for what? Better for looking at? Yes, it photographs beautifully, but better for living in? No. Simone, you've created a showroom, not a home." I pulled out more materials. The textbook passages about client autonomy, the magazine articles about respecting homeowners' visions, the quotes from famous designers. Do you remember this principle from design school? The designer's role is to facilitate the client's vision, not impose their own. But you didn't have a vision. You just had old habits. My old habits are my life, Simone. The way I've arranged my home reflects how I actually move through space, what activities I do where, what I need access to. You redesigned without understanding any of that. We observed how you live. For 3 hours while I wasn't even home. Simone, I've lived in this house for 23 years. I know every light pattern, every traffic flow, every functional requirement. You observed an empty house and designed for aesthetics. Garrett was getting defensive. Octavia, we were trying to help. We put in hours of work. Work I didn't ask for. Work that solved problems I didn't have. Work that created new problems I now have to deal with. So you want us to move everything back? Simone asked, tears forming. You want to reject our gift? It's not a gift when it's imposed without consent. Simone, if you'd called me and said, Mom, I have some ideas for freshening up your space. Would you like to hear them? I might have listened. If you'd said, can we work together on updating your living room? I might have agreed. But you didn't ask. You made decisions about my home without including me. That's not a gift. That's a violation. A violation. Mom, that's dramatic. Is it? Let me ask you something. Would you want me to come to your house while you were gone and rearrange all your furniture without asking? That's different. How is it different? Because you're our mother, we're trying to take care of you. I don't need taking care of. I'm 75, not helpless. Simone, I'm a professional interior designer with 40 years of experience. You're a retail worker at a furniture boutique with a design degree. Why do you think you know better than me how my house should be arranged? Simone looked hurt. I went to design school, I studied this. And I practiced it for 4 decades. But that's not even the point. The point is this is my house, my home, my space. I get to decide how it's arranged, whether my decisions meet professional design standards or not. That's what autonomy means. Then I pulled out my final piece of evidence, something I'd prepared that morning. I called 3 of my former clients this week, people whose homes I designed. I asked them, if I'd rearranged your home without asking, how would you have felt? Do you want to know what they said? I opened my laptop and played the recorded responses. Client 1, I would have felt violated. Even if the design was beautiful, it wouldn't have been mine. I hired you because you listened to what I wanted, not because you imposed what you thought was best. Client 2, that would have been a betrayal of trust. When you design someone's home, you're being trusted with their most intimate space. Changing it without permission crosses a fundamental boundary. Client 3, I would have felt like you didn't respect me or my judgment, like you thought you knew better than me how I should live. That's not help, that's control. Simone was crying now. Why are you doing this? Why are you making such a big deal out of us trying to help? Because you need to understand what you did. Simone, you violated my space. You made decisions about my home without my consent. You prioritized how you think I should live over how I actually live. And when I try to explain why that's wrong, you're insisting I should be grateful. We spent hours on this. We worked so hard. I didn't ask you to work hard on something I didn't want. Simone, effort doesn't justify violation. Intention doesn't excuse impact. Garrett stood up. I think we should leave. Octavia, we were trying to do something nice and you're attacking us for it. We won't make that mistake again. Good. Don't make decisions about other people's property without their permission. That's the mistake you shouldn't repeat. After they left, Simone still crying, Garrett angry. I sat in my rearranged living room feeling exhausted but also clear. I'd made my point, but I still had a problem. My house was still arranged wrong. That evening, Simone called. Mom, I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm not sorry we redesigned your space. We did improve it, whether you want to admit it or not. You're just too stubborn to see it. Simone, are you calling to apologize or to tell me I'm wrong? I'm calling to try to make peace. Mom, we don't have to agree about the design. Can't we just move past this? Move past it how? My house is still rearranged. Every day I live with furniture in wrong positions that make my life harder. How do I move past that? By adjusting, by giving it a real chance instead of being resistant, or by having it put back the way it was. We're not moving it back. Mom, we put in hours of work. We created something beautiful. We're not going to undo all that effort just because you're being stubborn about change. And there it was, the real issue. They weren't going to fix what they'd broken because they didn't believe they'd broken anything. So you're refusing to put my home back the way it was. We're refusing to destroy good design because you can't adapt. Even though it's my house and I'm asking you to. Mom, sometimes people need to be protected from their own bad decisions. Your old arrangement was terrible. We fixed it. You should be thanking us. I hung up calmly, and I realized something. Simone truly believed she'd done nothing wrong. She believed her design expertise gave her the right to override my preferences in my own home. She'd rearranged my house without asking, and now she was refusing to undo the damage because she thought she knew better than me how I should live. So I made a decision. If they wouldn't put my house back the way it was, I'd do it myself, but I'd do it in a way that taught them the lesson they needed to learn. The next day, I called a moving company. I need furniture moved within my home. Everything in specific rooms needs to be returned to original positions. I have photos showing exactly where everything should go. Can you help? They could. For $800, they'd send a team to move everything back. But before I scheduled them, I did one more thing. I called Simone. I'm hearing movers to put my house back the way it was. They'll be here on Thursday. If you want to be involved in moving the furniture back to correct positions, you're welcome to join. Otherwise, professionals will handle it. You're hearing movers. Mom, that's a waste of money. Just live with our design for a few more weeks and you'll see. I've lived with it for 10 days. Every single day has been less functional than before. My house is being returned to the arrangement that works for how I actually live. You can participate or not. This is so disrespectful to the work we did. And what you did was disrespectful to my autonomy. Simone, you have two choices. Accept that you made a mistake and help fix it, or refuse and watch professionals fix it for you. Either way, my home is being restored. Thursday arrived. Simone didn't come, but the movers did. I showed them the photos I'd taken before the rearrangement, pictures from over the years showing my home in its original arrangement. I showed them exactly where each piece belonged. It took them 4 hours, but when they finished, my home was back. My sofa facing the fireplace, my reading chair in the morning light, my desk by the window, everything exactly where it had been where it worked for me. I walked through each room, and for the first time in 10 days, I felt at home again. That evening, I took new photos. Then I sent Simone a message with before and after images. But this time, before was her redesign, and after was my restoration. The message said, "This is what respecting someone's home looks like, not imposing your vision but honoring theirs. Thank you for the lesson in what not to do." Simone didn't respond. But 2 days later, something happened that showed me this wasn't over. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 2 days after I'd hired movers to restore my home, I came back from grocery shopping to find something that made my blood run cold. Simone's car was in my driveway, and through my living room window, I could see movement inside my house. I walked quickly to my front door and opened it. Simone and Garrett were in my living room. They had already moved my sofa back to the position they'd chosen, away from the fireplace, facing the window. They were in the process of moving my reading chair. "What are you doing?" They both turned. Simone's face was determined, almost defiant. "We're fixing this. Mom, you wasted $800 on movers to ruin good design. We're not letting you live in dysfunction just because you're stubborn. We're putting it back the right way. You're rearranging my house. Again, without permission. Again." "We're correcting a mistake," Garrett said. "You put everything back wrong. We're making it right." I stood in my doorway, watching them manhandle my furniture, and I felt something I'd never felt toward my daughter before. Cold, pure anger. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone and I called the police. I need to report a trespassing. 2 people are in my home without permission, moving my property against my will. Simone's eyes went wide. Mom, you called the police on your own daughter. You're in my home without permission, altering my property against my explicit wishes. That's trespassing. We have a key that I gave you for emergencies, not for you to enter my home whenever you want to rearrange furniture I've specifically told you not to touch. Mom, this is insane. We're trying to help you. I've told you repeatedly I don't want your help. I've told you to stop rearranging my home. You're doing it anyway. That's not help, that's control, and it's illegal. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers, a woman named Officer Bradley and a man named Officer Kim. What's the situation here? I explained calmly. These are my daughter and son-in-law. 2 weeks ago, they entered my home without permission while I was out and rearranged all my furniture. I asked them to put it back. They refused. I hired movers to restore my home to the way I wanted it. Today, I came home to find them inside my house again, rearranging furniture against my explicit wishes. Officer Bradley looked at Simone. Ma'am, is this your home? No, but I'm her daughter. I was trying to help her. Does your mother want your help? She should want it. She's making bad decisions about her living space, and we're trying to fix. That's not what I asked. Does your mother want you to rearrange her furniture? She doesn't understand good design. Ma'am, that's not relevant. This is her home. She gets to decide how it's arranged, whether her decisions make sense to you or not. Did she give you permission to be here today? I have a key. Officer Kim spoke up. Having a key doesn't give you permission to enter whenever you want. Did she invite you here today? Silence. Mrs. Pierce, do you want to press charges for trespassing? I looked at Simone. She was crying, but there was still defiance in her eyes. She still believed she was right. Not today, but I want it documented, and I want my key back. Simone, give your mother her key. No, Mom, if I give you the key, I won't be able to check on you. I don't need you to check on me. Give me the key. Mrs. Pierce, Officer Bradley said gently, you can refuse to return the key, but then we'd have to consider this as refusing to leave the property when asked, which is criminal trespassing. Simone, crying harder now, pulled the key off her keychain and threw it at me. It hit my chest and fell to the floor. Fine, here's your precious key. Mom, I can't believe you called the police on me. I can't believe you're choosing furniture arrangement over your relationship with your daughter. I'm not choosing furniture over relationship. I'm choosing my right to control my own home over your insistence on controlling it for me. Simone, you chose this conflict when you violated my space repeatedly despite being asked to stop. After the police left, after writing up a report documenting the incident, and after Simone and Garrett left, I sat on my sofa that they'd partially moved, and I felt something break inside me. Not my resolve, my hope that Simone would understand. She'd come back after being explicitly told not to, after I'd spent $800 restoring my home, and she'd started rearranging it again. She was so convinced she was right that my consent didn't matter to her. I called a locksmith and had all my locks changed that afternoon. When Simone found out, she tried to use her key the next day and it didn't work. She sent me a furious text. You changed the locks. You're locking out your own daughter. Mom, this is extreme. We were just trying to help you and you're treating us like criminals. I responded, you entered my home without permission and altered my property against my explicit wishes. That's literally the definition of criminal trespassing. The locks are changed. Do not enter my home without being invited. Over the next week, I received multiple messages from Simone and from other family members she'd contacted. Simone's aunt, her father's sister. Delilah, Simone told me what happened. I'm shocked you'd call the police on your own daughter. She was just trying to help you. This seems very extreme. I responded with the facts. Simone entered my home without permission, Twice, to rearrange furniture I'd explicitly told her not to touch. When I asked her to stop, she refused. When I restored my home to how I wanted it, she broke in again to change it back. That's not help. That's control. My sister Celeste called. "Delilah, what's going on? Simone says you've banned her from your house over furniture." Simone violated my space repeatedly despite being asked to stop. She entered my home without permission to make changes I didn't want. She refused to respect my boundaries. The furniture is just what she used as the method of violation. The real issue is respect for my autonomy. But not everyone understood. Some family members thought I was overreacting. It's just furniture. She was trying to help. Family should forgive family. They didn't understand that it wasn't about furniture. It was about control. About Simone deciding she knew better than me how I should live and forcing her vision on me regardless of my wishes. 2 weeks after the police incident, I received an email from Simone. Long, detailed, filled with hurt and anger. "Mom, I've been thinking about this situation, and I've realized that you're experiencing control issues common in elderly people. As people age, they become rigid and resistant to change. They cling to familiar patterns even when those patterns are dysfunctional. This is what's happening with you. You've arranged your home in a way that worked 20 years ago, but you're 75 now. Your needs have changed. Your mobility has changed, but you're too rigid to adapt. Garrett and I redesigned your space based on current best practices for aging-in-place design. We improved traffic flow to reduce fall risks. We repositioned furniture to maximize natural light and reduce eye strain. We created better functionality for your current life stage. But you rejected all of it because you can't handle change. And when we tried to help you again, you called the police on your own daughter because we cared enough to try to improve your life. Mom, I think you need to see someone, a therapist or a geriatric specialist. This level of rigidity and these extreme reactions to help, they're not normal. They're signs of decline. I love you, but I can't have a relationship with you while you're behaving this way. When you're ready to admit you have a problem and get help, I'll be here. Until then, I need space from your toxic behavior. Simone." I read the email 3 times, and I recognized the strategy immediately. Simone was reframing the narrative. I wasn't a competent woman defending my boundaries. I was an elderly person experiencing cognitive decline and control issues. My resistance to her redesign wasn't about autonomy. It was about rigidity and dysfunction. She was pathologizing my boundaries to justify her violation of them. I knew this tactic. I'd seen clients' family members use it before. When someone sets a boundary you don't like, claim they're mentally unwell. When someone refuses to let you control them, suggest they need professional help. It's a form of gaslighting, and it's particularly effective with elderly people because there's always an underlying societal assumption that old equals declining. I wasn't declining. I was defending. But Simone was going to try to paint my defense as proof I needed the very control I was resisting. That evening, I did something I'd been considering since the police incident. I called a geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Raymond Walsh, who specialized in evaluating cognitive function and capacity. "Dr. Walsh, I need a comprehensive evaluation. Not because I think there's anything wrong with me, but because I need documentation that I'm competent. My daughter is suggesting I'm experiencing age-related rigidity and decline. I want proof that I'm not." Dr. Walsh scheduled me for a full evaluation, cognitive testing, psychological assessment, functional capacity evaluation. 3 hours of comprehensive testing. The results came back exactly as I expected. Mrs. Pierce demonstrates cognitive function well above average for her age. She scores in the 96th percentile across all cognitive domains. Psychological assessment shows no signs of rigidity, control issues, or maladaptive aging patterns. She demonstrates excellent judgment, appropriate emotional regulation, and healthy autonomy. Mrs. Pierce is fully competent to make decisions about her living environment and all other aspects of her life. I filed that report carefully. I had a feeling I'd need it. I was right. 3 weeks after Simone's email about my supposed decline, I received notice that she'd filed a petition with Adult Protective Services claiming I was experiencing self-neglect and making unsafe decisions about my living environment. The APS investigator, a woman named Jennifer Torres, came to my home. "Mrs. Pierce, we received a report expressing concern about your welfare. Your daughter claims you're living in unsafe conditions due to furniture arrangement that creates fall risks. She says you're resistant to necessary changes that would make your home safer. I need to assess your living conditions and your capacity to make safe decisions." I let Jennifer in. I showed her my clean, well-organized home with furniture arranged exactly how I wanted it, the arrangement I'd lived with successfully for 20 years. "Ms. Torres, my daughter didn't file this report out of concern. She filed it because I won't let her control how my home is arranged. Here's what actually happened." I showed her everything: the photos of Simone's unauthorized redesign, the documentation of functional problems it created, the police report from when she broke in to rearrange it again, the email where she pathologized my boundaries, and Dr. Walsh's evaluation showing I'm completely competent. Jennifer reviewed everything carefully. Then she walked through my home, assessing my actual living conditions. "Mrs. Pierce, your home is well-maintained and safe. The furniture arrangement poses no fall risks. In fact, it appears thoughtfully organized for functionality. You're clearly competent and managing your environment well. This report appears to have been made in bad faith. Can you document that in your findings?" "Absolutely. I'll be closing this case as unfounded and noting that the complaint seems motivated by a family conflict rather than genuine concern. Mrs. Pierce, your daughter doesn't have the right to dictate how you arrange your home. You're clearly capable of making your own decisions." After Jennifer left, I added her report to my growing file. Police documentation, psychiatric evaluation, APS report, all showing the same thing: I was competent, my choices were valid, and Simone's claims were false. But Simone wasn't done. 1 week later, I received a letter from an attorney named Michael Stevens representing Simone. The letter claimed I was experiencing age-related cognitive rigidity and poor judgment about my living environment. It claimed my unsafe furniture arrangement created serious fall risks. It claimed I'd become hostile and paranoid when family tried to help, even calling police on my own daughter. The letter demanded I undergo a comprehensive geriatric evaluation by a physician of my daughter's choosing, and that I allow my daughter to make necessary safety modifications to my home. If I refused, Simone would pursue all legal options to ensure my safety, including guardianship proceedings. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched, documented, and defended my boundaries. And now my daughter was threatening to have me declared incompetent and seek legal control over my life, all because I wouldn't let her dictate how I arranged my furniture. I called my own attorney, a woman named Patricia Hammond who specialized in elder law. "Patricia, my daughter is threatening guardianship because I won't let her control how I arrange my home. I need legal protection." Patricia reviewed all my documentation: the police report, the psychiatric evaluation, the APS report, the attorney's letter. "Delilah, what your daughter is doing is elder abuse. She's using guardianship threats as a weapon to control you, but you have excellent documentation showing you're competent. We can fight this. And Delilah, we can win." What do I do? We respond to the attorney's letter. We provide your evaluation showing competence. We make clear that any guardianship petition will be vigorously opposed and will fail. And Delilah, we consider filing our own complaint against your daughter for harassment and attempted exploitation. Patricia drafted a response that was precise and devastating. "Mr. Stevens, I represent Delilah Pierce in response to your letter dated date. Your client's claims are false and appear motivated by a desire to control Mrs. Pierce's living environment against her will, not by genuine concern for her welfare. Mrs. Pierce is fully competent, as documented by comprehensive geriatric psychiatric evaluation, attached. She scores in the 96th percentile for cognitive function. She demonstrates excellent judgment and appropriate decision-making capacity. Mrs. Pierce's home is safe and well-maintained, as confirmed by Adult Protective Services investigation, report attached. The APS investigation closed the case as unfounded and noted the complaint appeared made in bad faith. Your client has repeatedly entered Mrs. Pierce's home without permission to rearrange furniture against Mrs. Pierce's explicit wishes. When Mrs. Pierce called police to enforce her property rights, your client became hostile. Mrs. Pierce is not paranoid. She's appropriately protecting her boundaries from violation. Mrs. Pierce will not undergo evaluation by a physician chosen by your client. She has already been comprehensively evaluated by an independent professional who found her fully competent. Mrs. Pierce will not allow your client to make modifications to her home. It is Mrs. Pierce's home, and she has the sole right to decide how it is arranged. If your client files a frivolous guardianship petition, we will oppose it vigorously. We will present extensive evidence of Mrs. Pierce's competence and evidence that your client's petition is retaliatory and motivated by a desire for control, not genuine concern. Furthermore, we are considering filing a complaint against your client for elder abuse, specifically harassment and attempted financial exploitation through improper use of guardianship proceedings. Advise your client to cease all attempts to control Mrs. Pierce's living environment and all threats of legal action. Sincerely, Patricia Hammond, attorney at law. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched, and then I built a case so strong that their attempts to control me would fail completely. After Patricia sent the response letter, there was silence from Simone and her attorney for 2 weeks. I thought maybe the threat of legal consequences had finally made her understand she couldn't control me. I was wrong. What came next was something I didn't anticipate, not a legal attack, but a social one. Simone started a campaign. She called family members, posted on social media, told friends and neighbors a carefully crafted story. My elderly mother is declining but refuses to accept help. She's become paranoid and hostile. She called the police on me when I tried to make her home safer. I'm terrified she's going to fall and hurt herself, but she won't listen. Please pray for our family during this difficult time. She never mentioned that she'd rearranged my house without permission. She never mentioned that she'd broken in to do it again after being told not to. She never mentioned the professional evaluations showing I was completely competent. She just positioned herself as the concerned daughter and me as the declining, difficult elderly mother. And some people believed her. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stopped me in the yard one day. "Delilah, I heard about your situation with Simone. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Is there anything I can do to help?" "What did you hear?" "That you're having some memory and judgment issues. That you've become resistant to help. Delilah, there's no shame in aging. We all need support eventually." "Mrs. Patterson, I'm not declining. Simone rearranged my house without permission and is angry I wouldn't let her keep it that way. She's created a false narrative about my competence to justify her behavior." Mrs. Patterson looked uncertain. "Oh, well, Simone seemed very concerned." "Simone is concerned that I won't let her control my living space. That's different from me needing help." But I could see the doubt in Mrs. Patterson's eyes. Simone's story was compelling because it fit a familiar pattern: adult child worried about aging parent who doesn't recognize their own decline. My story, competent woman defending boundaries from controlling daughter, was less familiar, less comfortable for people to accept. Over the next week, I had similar conversations with 3 other neighbors, 2 family members, and a woman from my book club. All had heard Simone's version. All were sympathetic to her as the burdened daughter. I showed some of them my documentation, the psychiatric evaluation, the APS report. Some believed me. Others remained uncertain, as if the very existence of conflict meant I must be somewhat at fault. Then Simone did something that crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. She created a GoFundMe campaign. The title, Help My Mom Get the Care She Needs. The description, my mother is 75 and experiencing age-related decline that she refuses to acknowledge. She's living in unsafe conditions, but becomes hostile when family tries to help. We need to raise funds for professional intervention, possible assisted living evaluation, and legal fees to ensure she gets proper care. Please help me protect my mom even though she won't protect herself. The goal, $15,000. I found out because my sister Celeste called me, upset. Delilah, did you know Simone started a fundraiser saying you need assisted living? People are donating. This is all over Facebook. I looked it up. The campaign had been live for 3 days. It had raised $2,400 from 37 donors. People I knew. Family members, friends, former clients, all giving money to help me by funding Simone's attempts to control my life. The comments were worse. Praying for you, Simone. It's so hard when our parents won't accept they need help. Your mother is lucky to have such a devoted daughter. This is what love looks like, fighting for someone even when they fight against you. I sat at my computer, at my desk positioned by the window where I'd always had it, where I'd returned it after Simone's violation, and I felt something I hadn't felt through this entire ordeal: defeat. Not because Simone was winning, but because she'd made my private boundary conflict into a public spectacle, and she was using other people's money and sympathy as weapons against me. I called Patricia Hammond. Simone started a GoFundMe claiming I need assisted living and asking for money to fund legal action against me. What can I do? We report it to GoFundMe as fraudulent. You're not declining, you don't need assisted living, and she's raising money under false pretenses. We can also send a cease and desist letter demanding she take it down and return all funds. Will that work? Legally, yes. Socially, people who have already donated will still believe Simone's story. Delilah, we can win the legal battle. The social battle is harder. I don't care about the social battle. I care about my boundaries and my rights. Make her take it down. Patricia filed a complaint with GoFundMe and sent Simone's attorney a letter demanding the campaign be removed immediately and all funds returned to donors, stating it was fraudulent misrepresentation. GoFundMe took it down within 48 hours after reviewing my documentation showing I was competent and Simone's claims were false. But the damage was done. The story had spread. People had seen the campaign, read Simone's claims, formed opinions about my supposed decline. Even after the campaign was removed, those opinions remained. Then something happened that changed everything. One of my former clients, a woman named Helen Marks, whose home I'd designed 15 years ago, called me. Delilah, I saw what your daughter posted before it was taken down. I know it's not true, and I want to help. Thank you, Helen, but I don't think there's much. No, listen, I'm a retired attorney. I specialized in elder law before I retired. And what your daughter is doing, the false narrative, the fundraising, the guardianship threats, I've seen this pattern before. It's called concerned child syndrome. Adult children who believe they know better than their competent parents, who use the parent's age as justification for control, who can't accept that their parent has the right to refuse their help. That's exactly what's happening. I want to help you document this, not just for defense against Simone's threats, but as a case study. Delilah, if you're willing, I'd like to write about your situation anonymously if you prefer, and present it at an elder law conference. This pattern is common, but it's rarely documented this well. You have psychiatric evaluations, APS reports, police documentation, attorney letters. You have a complete record of an adult-child weaponizing concern to justify control. What would that accomplish? It would educate other attorneys about this pattern. It would help other elderly people recognize when concern is actually control. And Delilah, it would create a public record that might make Simone think twice about continuing this campaign. I thought about it, then I said yes. Helen spent 2 weeks reviewing all my documentation and interviewing me about the timeline. She wrote a comprehensive case study. When concern becomes control, a case study of boundary violation disguised as caregiving. The case study detailed everything: the unauthorized redesign, the repeated violations, the false APS report, the guardianship threats, the fraudulent fundraising. It analyzed the pattern. Adult child makes unsolicited changes, parent resists, adult child pathologizes resistance as decline, adult child uses legal and social pressure to force compliance. Helen presented it at a national elder law conference. She sent me the feedback, standing ovation, attorneys from across the country requesting copies, several asking for permission to use it as a teaching tool. And one attorney who attended the conference knew Simone's attorney, Michael Stevens. He mentioned Helen's presentation. Michael asked for a copy of the case study. 3 days after Michael Stevens read the case study, I received a letter from him, not to me, but to Patricia Hammond. Ms. Hammond, after reviewing additional information about this case, I am withdrawing as counsel for Simone Bennett. I was provided with incomplete and potentially false information about Mrs. Pierce's condition and situation. Based on what I now understand, Mrs. Pierce is competent, and her daughter's concerns appear unfounded. I advised my former client that pursuing guardianship would be frivolous and likely to fail, and that continued harassment of Mrs. Pierce could result in legal consequences for her. I apologize for the tone of my previous correspondence. It was based on information I now believe to be inaccurate. Sincerely, Michael Stevens. Simone's attorney had dropped her. After seeing the full picture, after understanding that he'd been fed a false narrative and was being used to harass a competent woman, he'd walked away. The next day, I received a call from Simone. Her voice was different, smaller, defeated. Mom, Michael dropped me as a client. He said my case has no merit. He said I could face legal consequences if I keep trying to. If you keep trying to control me. Silence, then quietly. I wasn't trying to control you, I was trying to help you. By rearranging my house without permission, by breaking in when I put it back, by calling APS with false reports, by threatening guardianship, by raising money online claiming I need assisted living. Simone, at what point does help become abuse? I genuinely thought you needed help. Mom, you're 75 and living alone in a big house and refusing to make changes that could make it safer. The changes you wanted weren't about safety. They were about you imposing your design vision on my space. Simone, you rearranged my reading chair away from the light. You moved my desk away from the window. You repositioned my dining table away from the garden view. None of that was about safety. It was about you thinking you knew better than me how I should live. Because I do know better, I studied design. I understand how spaces should work. And I practiced design for 40 years. But that's not even the point. The point is, it's my house. Even if your design was objectively better, which it wasn't for how I actually live, I get to decide. That's what autonomy means. That's what respect means. I can't accept that you're right, and I'm wrong about everything. I'm not asking you to accept that. I'm asking you to accept that I have the right to be wrong if that's what you think I am. Simone, you don't have to agree with my choices. You just have to respect my right to make them. I don't know if I can do that. Then we don't have a relationship. Because I can't have a relationship with someone who thinks they have the right to override my decisions about my own life. Simone was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I need to think about this, I don't know what I need. Mom, I'm sorry about some of the things I did. The fundraiser was wrong, I see that now. But I'm not sorry about trying to help you. I'm not sorry about caring. Caring without consent is control, Simone. When you're ready to understand that, we can talk. She hung up. Over the next 3 months, I didn't hear from Simone. No calls, no texts, no visits. But I heard through family members that she'd started therapy. That she was working through her need to control, her belief that caring meant fixing, her inability to accept other people's autonomy. I didn't reach out. This was work she needed to do on her own. Then, 4 months after our last conversation, I received a letter. Handwritten, 8 pages long. Mom, I've been in therapy for 4 months now, working on understanding what I did and why I did it. My therapist helped me see something I didn't want to see. I've been trying to control you for years. Not just with the furniture, but with suggestions about your life, your choices, your routines. Every time I said, "You should update this," or "Why don't you try that?" or "Have you thought about changing this?" I was telling you that your way was wrong and my way was better. The furniture rearrangement wasn't an isolated incident. It was the extreme expression of a pattern I'd been building for years, the belief that I knew better than you how you should live. My therapist asked me why I felt the need to control your space. The answer was uncomfortable, because I couldn't control my own life. My marriage is struggling. My job is unfulfilling. My finances are messy. I have so much in my own life that feels chaotic and unmanageable, but I couldn't face those problems. So instead, I focused on fixing you. Your house became my project. If I could make your space perfect, if I could improve your life, then maybe I'd feel competent and in control, even if my own life was falling apart. But you didn't need fixing. I did. When you resisted my redesign, it felt like you were rejecting my help. But really, you were protecting yourself from my need to control something, anything, to make myself feel better. I used your age against you. I told myself, and others, that you were declining so I wouldn't have to face the truth, that you were competent, healthy, and making deliberate choices I simply disagreed with. I violated your space. I violated your trust. I violated your autonomy. And when you defended yourself, I attacked you harder, because admitting I was wrong would mean facing how out of control my own life had become. Mom, I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing to say you were right about everything. I had no right to rearrange your home. I had no right to break in and do it again. I had no right to call APS or threaten guardianship or start that fundraiser. Every single thing I did was wrong. You weren't declining. You weren't being difficult. You were being autonomous. And I couldn't handle that because I'd built my entire identity around being the helpful daughter who knew what was best for you. I'm working on accepting that you don't need me to manage your life. That caring about someone doesn't mean controlling them. That love means respecting boundaries, not violating them. I'm working on myself, my marriage, my career, my issues with control. I'm trying to become someone who can accept other people's autonomy without seeing it as rejection. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again, but I wanted you to know I finally understand what I did, and I'm truly, deeply sorry. With respect and regret, Simone. I read the letter multiple times. It was the first time Simone had taken complete responsibility without justifications, without claims that she'd meant well, without insisting her intentions mattered more than her impact. It was genuine accountability. I waited 2 weeks before responding. I wanted to make sure my reply was thoughtful, not reactive. Finally, I wrote back. Simone, thank you for your letter. It means more than you know to hear you take full responsibility for what you did. I'm proud of you for doing the therapeutic work to understand your need to control and where it comes from. That's hard work, and it takes courage. You're right that we may never have the relationship we had before. The trust is damaged in ways that might not fully heal. What you did, the violations, the attacks, the public campaign, those actions showed me a side of you I didn't know existed. But I'm willing to rebuild something new. Not the old relationship where you felt entitled to manage my life, but a new relationship where we're both equals with mutual respect. If you want, we can start small. Lunch once a month at a neutral location. Conversations that don't involve my home, my choices, or unsolicited advice. Just being mother and daughter in a boundaried way. If you continue the work you're doing, if you show consistent respect for my autonomy over time, not just in words but in actions, maybe eventually we can have a closer relationship. But that relationship will never include you having input on how I arrange my home. That boundary is permanent. My space, my choices, my autonomy, non-negotiable. I hope you understand. Mom. Simone and I started having monthly lunches. At first they were careful, both of us watching our words, but gradually we found a rhythm. She told me about her therapy, her work on her marriage, her efforts to address her own life instead of trying to fix mine. I told her about my activities, my projects, my life, not seeking her approval, just sharing. 6 months into this new relationship, Simone came to my house for the first time since the police incident. I'd invited her for tea. She walked into my living room, furniture arranged exactly as I'd always had it, exactly as she'd tried to change, and she stood there for a moment, just looking. "Mom, can I say something?" "Of course." "Your house looks good. It looks like you, and I'm sorry I ever tried to change that." "Thank you. I still think the traffic flow could be optimized, and the visual weight is a little off balance, and you could get better natural light if—" She stopped herself, laughed. "Sorry, old habits. Your house is perfect for you. That's all that matters." That's all that's ever mattered. Now, at 75, I still live in my house. The house Simone tried to redesign without my permission. The house I defended by documenting violations, seeking legal protection, and refusing to let guilt override my boundaries. Every piece of furniture is exactly where I want it. My sofa faces the fireplace. My reading chair sits in morning light. My desk looks out at the garden. My home reflects my life, my needs, my choices. I volunteer now with an elder law organization, sharing my story at workshops about protecting autonomy in aging. They rearranged my house without asking, I tell audiences. My daughter and son-in-law entered my home while I was out and completely redesigned it without my permission. When I came home, they were waiting for my grateful reaction to their surprise. I always pause there, letting people absorb it. I didn't yell. I didn't immediately confront them. I watched. I documented. I lived with their arrangement long enough to catalog every functional failure. Then I built a case so strong that when they tried to claim I was declining and needed control, I had overwhelming evidence that I was competent and they were violating me. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched, not because I accepted it, but because I was gathering evidence. And then I defended my boundaries so effectively that my daughter eventually had to face the truth. She wasn't helping me. She was controlling me, and control disguised as care is still abuse. People always ask, how did you stay so calm? How did you not just scream at them to put it back? Because anger without strategy is just noise. I learned as a designer that the best response to violation isn't emotional, it's structural. You build protections. You document patterns. You create consequences that make future violations impossible. They rearranged my house without asking, so I built a fortress of documentation that made sure they could never do it again. My relationship with Simone continues to heal, slowly. She still sees her therapist. She still works on accepting that other people's autonomy isn't rejection of her love. And my house remains mine, every room arranged exactly how I want it, every space reflecting my choices, my life, my autonomy. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched. And then I took it back, not just the furniture, but my right to control my own space, my own life, my own existence. My daughter thought she could improve my home. She learned that respect matters more than aesthetics, that consent matters more than good intentions, and that a person's home is sacred, not to be violated, even by someone who claims to care. They rearranged my house without asking. I watched, documented, defended, and won. And in the process, I taught my daughter the most important lesson of all, that loving someone means respecting their boundaries, not crossing them in the name of help. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.